really remind you that despite anything that you're going through, regardless of anything that you're facing right now, that you can overcome. If someone like Malala is now studying at Oxford, you as well can overcome your present situation to achieve a lot more. Speaking, of course, of achieving, that is exactly what my next guest has done. Professor Winnie Mitullah is here to tell us about gender representation and how far we've come, not just as a globe, not just as a continent or region, but as a country. Are we where we're supposed to be? Let's find out. Welcome her, everybody. Come out here, Prof. As you know, every single Thursday, we like to highlight amazing milestones and, of course, great things that are happening here at the University of Nairobi through a segment dubbed Millennials. We'll share a clip with you very, very shortly on that. But Professor Mitullah, how are you doing this morning?
Good.
Excellent.
I'm good.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up being a professor here.
Well, my background, I'm born and raised in Nairobi. Yeah. So my background right now academically is in political science, but I'm heading the Institute for Development Studies of the University of Nairobi. Basically, I research in the area of urban development and literally looking at issues of policy, service delivery, and issues to do with social protection and human development. Absolutely. Essentially. Okay. Yeah. So gender, as I've heard you talk about, is one of those areas that we are very concerned about in terms of inclusion. Yeah. It
seems that, Professor, we've been concerned about it for a while now, and there has been some strides in the right direction, but not enough for us to say, oh my gosh, this was the breaking year. Where are we in Kenya when it comes to gender representation across the board?
I think one, in terms of policy, because usually you begin at policy level, you have to have a framing, a mechanism that ensures that everything can fall in place. Our constitution is very clear now. No lady, no woman is left behind in terms of that pillar. Yes. When you look at other policies as well, whether it's midterm development plan, everywhere else, women and men, boys and girls are mentioned and talked about. But when you come to the practical aspects, then you start seeing that gap. And when you look at representation, which is largely political, let's take political representation, we are coming way up from 1969, I think, when we had the first woman in politics. That was Grace Onyango, if we remember well. And then all the way, we are now at 23%. At that time, you can imagine. Now we're just at 23%. How many years down the line?
Exactly.
Almost 50.
Almost 50 years, which is a long time.
So the thing is, it's there, yes, but it's very incremental. And I must also say that post 1990, it's a bit faster. Because you remember the last parliament, we had about 18 point something in parliament, women. But right now we are at 23. We had no governor. We had no female governor in Kenya. Now we have 3 female governors. Of course, we've reduced, you know, the deputy governors were 9. Now they are less. So you see, there are gains and losses across in the middle of it.
But looking at it, and I think politically, yes, that we can use that as our gauge.
Yes.
23% it's 2017. 23% is a good number, but it's not a percentage
that is required.
That is required. I mean, it would be an ideal world if we had 50-50 representation. Why has it taken so long? What are some of the setbacks?
I think as much as the path is clear, the policies are there, the mechanisms, legislations are in place, there are other things that it takes to get into power. For example, the economics part of it. You know, you got to have enough resources. Look at how the campaigns in this country are done. It's massive. Absolutely. It's massive. And unless you've really built some resource, you cannot actually access those sources of power because of that lack of resources, the finances that goes into it, and secondly, the socio-cultural aspect. Attitude seems to be really, really something. But again, Kenya is making gains. You can see we now have some women from really the pastoral areas who are able actually to compete, not just to come under the women-only seats, special seats. They competed and they were able to come to parliament on their own, beating men. So really, Kenya really did well in 2017 in terms of seeing some brave women braving it up. And of course, again, one thing we need to appreciate is that when women get opportunity, for example, nomination. Women who have tended to be nominated at the end of the day end up making it. Right. So you see that's a first step again of mentorship, or rather facilitating women to get up the ladder.
Is our political class a representation of gender representation across the board in other institutions, in our workforces, in our communities?
No,
okay.
It's still much, much short. It's much, much below. Of course, there is monitoring, a lot of monitoring by the Commission for Equality and Gender Commission, okay. But it's still short. If you look at all institutions, including our institution here, we are doing very well, but on a comparative basis, as you go up the ladder, we get lost, you know. Right. Somebody like me, I'm a director, but as you go up the ladder, you look at where you get to the vice chancellors, deputy vice chancellors, then you see less numbers. So these less numbers, I think, is where now we need to deal with. But at the middle level and middle lower, it's quite almost balanced. I think in some entities, you even get women, more women than men. Okay. I think the judiciary is one good example. Yeah. If you look at magistrates, there are quite a number there. Okay. And you look at medics, you know, the medical area, they are now quite almost close to balancing up. Okay. But when you look at now, let's say you had an agency that is managing maybe medical, maybe it's an authority. Right. You might find that authority might never be headed by a woman. So one would ask, why would such authorities not be headed by many women if women have specialization in those areas?
Absolutely.
So there is some issue. And I think the element of sponsorship comes here. Okay. This concept is not quite researched, but it's quite there. Somebody to hold your hands, you know, to walk with you, to talk for you, to, you know,
represent you in a sense.
Represent you in a sense in those tables that we can't see. You know, those tables that are behind doors that declare who should be the cabinet minister, that declare who should be what.
Exactly.
Those are not open tables.
I'll tell you what, Professor, and our viewers who are watching, there's two women who sat here before August 8th. One of them was Rachel Shebesh.
Yes.
And the second woman the next day who sat here was Esther Passaris.
Yes.
And a lot of people wouldn't know this, and I learned it on that day, is that they're friends.
Yes.
And Esther Passaris got into politics after Rachel Shebesh, and she will say that actually Rachel Shebesh helped her a little bit sort of figure out the ropes and everything, and both of them actually give each other credit for sort of supporting each other.
Excellent.
And you realize that actually, yes, it has been happening and it needs to happen. Is it happening in terms of the lean in terms of the women sort of pulling each other up, helping each other? Is it happening at the corporate level? Is it happening at public institutional level? Or are we just seeing it within, I guess, politics only?
It's more along the line of politics. Yeah. But it's also happening in other areas, but it's not necessarily the woman pulling the woman. Yeah. I think the women who have even done better are the ones who have been able to be pulled by the men.
Right.
Yeah, if the men can lead you into the right path, into getting to know where the opportunities exist, what it takes to kind of lobby. Lobbying is, absolutely. You know, competence is one thing. You can be a professor, but you'll never get even shortlisted with all the capacities that you have. Yeah.
Looking at, of course, something you've alluded to, which is our culture, our thinking, our way from the past. Yeah. We've seen Martha Karua run for president in this country. We've seen other women across the continent and the world. Hillary Clinton made history just by running for the first time in the US. It is a sad day when you sort of see these candidates who gave their all not come anywhere near the office. And it says something a lot about where we are, even as women. Even as women, because you'd think, you know, if a woman stands in this country and decides to run, every woman will stand behind her. It's not the case.
No.
What is wrong with us, if I can ask?
I think it's not the case, but I think now that you mentioned Martha Karua, what shocked me more than anything is Dida beating Martha.
Right, he
because
did.
Here is a lady who had been a minister, she had been everything, she had the capacity, she was a lawyer, she was engaging, she had the networks.
Right.
But Dida beat her, coming into the scene hardly 6 months to elections.
We hardly knew him.
So that really, you'd want to look and search for explanation almost at attitude element. And also, of course, you can talk about alliances that you have at the point when you are putting your candidacy as a president. Right. I would imagine that if you have the networks and the alliances behind you, it would really not matter even whether you have resources or not. Okay. You can see what we've just said in 2017. I mean, people made it. People made it. They didn't have to have money, or they didn't have to be very efficient and effective. Yeah, some were effective, but some didn't have to. But they were in right alliances whether it's party alliances or whether it's a lobby alliance, there were some push that enabled them to get to the seats.
To get to where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the issues is, of course, representation, and representation at the authority level where it really matters. But one thing I can definitely say that has come to the fore, and this is globally, is remuneration. So you and I, my male counterpart, could have the same exact position, we could have the same terms of reference and same job description, but a man is always paid higher than a woman, and this is becoming an issue of contention. Is this something in terms of gender representation that is being looked at as a priority at all?
I think it's not quite right.
Okay.
If we take the audience here, men and women, I don't know where the women are.
But I know.
Let's take, if we took two of them with equal capacity, and they are having the same jobs, they are all directors, the incomes are the same.
Okay.
Actually, just to correct what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, the incomes are the same. If I'm a director today at the Institute for Development Studies and another director of the University of Nairobi, everything of ours is 100% equal.
Really?
100%
I stand
equal.
Corrected, thank you.
You stand corrected,
yes,
it's equal. And I think in this country, to a large extent, is that, you know, a principal secretary who is a female does not make anything lower than the male principal secretary. What you can look that might be different are the other needs, extra needs that this female might require that is not provided around them. You remember the stupid thing of parliament women not going with handbags?
Yes, I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, and I have heard also that in our defense to date, if you are a woman and you have a child and you are not married, that child cannot be seen by the defense doctors. Because you are not married. I was very shocked when I had this 2 days ago, and I didn't believe it. I told them to get to the Equality Commission, the Gender Commission, and find out. Because why would my child not be treated just because I don't have a husband?
Exactly.
I mean, those are the kind of little but very serious issues that pull women back. Because when you have a child who cannot be treated under your medical cover, and you are being treated, and it's just because you don't have a husband, that's something.
That's pure discrimination.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. So those are the nuances. But when it comes to the kind of the normal, you know, procedure of hiring and terms of employment, it's the same. It's the same.
Looking at, of course, where we are, and this is not just for Kenya, but globally as well, are we expecting a place where, I mean, now, and a few days ago we talked about gender equality, but based on, of course, statistics on sexual-based violence and that kind of thing, and looking at the fact that so many organizations globally have focused on the girl child, have focused on the woman. We are now very well set with in our SDG goals. Are we seeing a world where even in 5 years, this conversation of representation will become a thing of the past?
5 years is too close. And that's why in gender discourse, you always have the long term and the short term. Most of the things we are doing, even these 47 women who are women reps, as they call them, I think it's a short-term thing. You know, futuristic for the young people sitting around here, there will be no such thing like women reserved seats because we shall have competed and bridged the gap. So all these are really like affirmative actions that are meant to bridge the gap. So I foresee ourselves moving, but not in 5 years. Look at the Nordic countries. When I visit the Nordic countries anytime, I mean, it's more women around those tables. It's more women than men, literally, in very key areas. You see there are more women than men. So it's happening in the Nordic countries. I think they are already there. It's not an issue anymore. But they still say it's just an issue. I don't know. They still tell us, no. We have some unique issues that are women-related or gender-related. But when I see it, they are way ahead of us. And I foresee us going there. Our 18%, if all goes well, hopefully we'll get the 2/3 you know, that is required in our constitutional provision, which we have failed to get. And you've seen how the struggle about that 2/3, the 1/3 requirement, cannot just be passed in our parliament. So the thing is, what is so difficult about this 1/3 requirement, we missed it in 2013, and we will miss it again, I'm sure. this 2017, if we are not careful.
If we're not
will
careful.
be another 10 years, you know, post-constitutional making, we will still miss it.
I think let's get down, before we take a break, let's get down to the mental state of not just men, but across the board as citizens of this country. When we start to look at priorities and why we ask for women representation, it is because they are uniquely set to address some issues that a male counterpart cannot. Talk to me about that and what needs to shift mentally for us to really recognize that this is not just looking for a seat on the table. It's because I know what need is in this county for these women, and so I need to be at this table.
I know it's very dicey, that issue of whether you need women to represent the interests of women.
Right.
And this is a question that is always on table.
Yeah.
But I think what I can say is that it is a matter of the one that, you know, where the bolt hits the nut.
Right.
You know, if you're talking about reproduction health, a man is talking about reproduction health, really, that man can articulate it, but cannot articulate that issue as good as a woman who has carried a baby for 9 months.
True.
No.
Okay.
So that is the kind of issue that comes on board when you come to the argument that why be represented by women? Why should women represent women? It's not women representing women.
Right.
It's first looking at gender. If at all there is an intersectional element that is in any world, it is about gender. Gender is the most intersectional thing, not even ethnic.
Yeah.
So in gender, you want to see both gender on table. In terms of even just having it, you know, uniform.
Right.
You need to see them, and more so in terms of articulation. Women will definitely, if they have the facts and the right, you know, capacities, articulate the issues much better. Not that the men can't do it, but they will articulate it from the point of knowledge and from the point of expression and feeling. You know, you cannot express what it feels to do all those multiple roles that women carry and still go to work. If you are a man, you can try, but you don't feel it like the women would feel it.
Okay.
So I think that representation is very important, that women articulate their issues.
Absolutely, very well
But
said.
that does not negate the fact that there are some men who even articulate women issues better than the women.
Absolutely, and we need to recognize that.
Yes, we need to recognize
Looking
that.
at it from a human resource perspective and how those changes can begin to happen, even if it's a trickle effect. I think we always wait for a national gazetted moment, for a huge, you know, ceremony for us to say, hey, we have reached this place. How can we start within our own communities, within our own institutions, within our own human resource departments to say, hey, this department might need, I mean, I'm happy today we have one boy and Jane, all right? Very rarely did I have female cinematographers here, and it's so nice to have you ladies. It really is. I was always with guys, you know, and I'm glad whoever did this. But how do we start to do that within our own small pockets?
I think first of all, we need to recognize where each gender is dominant. So that when you're looking for women, don't start looking for women in parliament and in Senate.
Right.
Begin from the premise that whichever spot you are at, you can make a contribution. Then look at how you form the linkages. And if those linkages are right, then you are likely to pop up going up the ladder.
Okay.
Like, you know, we have so many women groups, self-help groups. They are massive across the country. Within those groups, there are leaders. There are women doing very meaningful things. And even us at the university. Sometimes people ask us, why are you not in commissions? Why are you not an MP? And I say, people have to teach. You have to have some of us teaching. But the issue is, we need those linkages. The linkages really is what will pop that woman that is basically doing very basic things, poultry, at a very localized level, reaching that woman in parliament or reaching that institution that may change her life in terms of either, you know, improving their production and their processes. So I think the linkage for me is the most important and the least addressed. We need to link whichever entities, wherever they are, whether they are men and women, whatever they are doing, they must have the linkages up the ladder, the vertical. Because the vertical is what is lacking. It's like you lift people and you throw them at the top of the ladder.
And then
from a nobody to an MP and to a, you know, a principal
governor,
secretary,
to a principal secretary, to a cabinet secretary, to now.
And then you don't see the others. It's like you don't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's important that they matter. Looking at this Institute for Development Studies, and particularly looking at gender, do you have male students applying a lot for this? Are we seeing a growing number? What can you say about the
I think we have both.
Institute?
Our institute is almost both. It's almost equal numbers.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Almost equal numbers. And it's because we deal with human development.
Okay.
We deal with all these issues of practical livelihood issues. Yeah. The kind of students that we produce are the students going there to work in embassies. They are going to work in development programs, development projects. They work as they could also work in government institutions, but they are very much development oriented. They are into development planning and development discourse at the ground level.
Professor Mitullah, it's such an awesome pleasure having you here and having you articulate this huge topic and simplifying for us. Please give her a hand, everybody.
Thank you.
I counted earlier, and we have about 9 women today in our audience, but in the room, we are more. I feel like we're not more than men. All right. So ladies, I want to encourage you to come on Better Living. We're here at the University of Nairobi every single week. So all you have to do is log on to social media platforms and we'll get you in touch with the right guy. He's awesome, who's going to let you know how you can become part of our audience. But the University of Nairobi is doing a lot in terms of ensuring that they have the representation card right up there and they're leading that campaign. So we will connect you to the Institute for Development Studies and Professor Mitullah so she can guide you in the right direction. For now, we thank you so much for being here this morning, and we say thank you, everybody.